Yeah, so hi everyone, thanks for joining. We're talking about the incubation engineering Jamstack SEG update today. And I'm gonna take this opportunity to give an update on the pipeline wizard, which has just recently been merged. And I'm gonna walk quickly through it, how it looks now at the moment and how to use it. And then I'm gonna talk about what I'm planning as in terms of next steps, how I wanna use it with GitLab pages and how that's going to look like. So just to very quickly demo what it looks like right now. This is the MR that's now finally been merged, so yay. And here's my local instance where I'm using it in GitLab pages, which is its first use instance. So this is just some kind of demo repository that I have set up locally. I'm going to go to pages. And now instead of the old link to the documentation, we're going to be presented with this simple 4-step onboarding process that makes the whole thing work. So initially, all we need is a build image, which for most front-end pages would be Node.js. The next one would be the installation steps, which is usually npm install or npm CI. And the next one would be, how do I build the application? For example, if I have a Nux.js application, it would probably be npm run build. You can see how it sets up the GitLab CI YAML on the right-hand side. I've demoed that before with a little hint as to what part of the CI YAML file we're currently updating. Deployment branches would be main. And the last step is actually the ability to commit this new GitLab CI YAML file, which will then trigger the pipeline deploy. We can add a commit message or leave the default one, can select the branch I want this to commit this to. And I've had a conversation with Sri earlier today about how I would like in the future to add the ability here to create an MR instead of directly committing to a branch. But that's something for a later iteration. So this is just an MVC. It has other features that are missing, such as filtering, but I'm going to talk about this in a minute. So if I click commit, it will obviously commit this. And this is where it stops at the moment. And this is the part that I'm working on right now. Redirecting the user to an interim state page. Because what happens now, I've clicked commit. Obviously, a pipeline has been created and is now running. And we have that information state in GitLab pages, in the GitLab pages metadata, where we know whether a pages site has been deployed. But that won't be true right until the page is actually deployed and live. So now we're in a weird interim state where the pipeline is probably still running, or it maybe failed because I did something wrong. So we don't have a deployed site yet. So right now, if I go back to GitLab pages here, I'm being presented again with the onboarding state. So my little piece of work that I'm doing right now is adding another database column that basically just shows onboarding state. It will be set to true using the user interface. So as soon as I'm clicking commit on that last thing, we have the information, okay, the user already went through this whole thing. So present them with a better page that says basically, Okay, we know you set this up, but look in the pipeline to know what's going on right now. So yeah, this is what I'm doing with GitLab with regards to GitLab pages. It's a minor MR, but it's the first one that I've developed that has a database change. So there's a little overhead with that regard. So there's a little migration in there. This is what I've been working on this week. But I'm going to use this whole GitLab pages pipeline wizard to demonstrate how the wizard could be used in any other context. Because I've now set up the wizard with this whole configuration where I'm saying here, select your build image and installation steps. How does that look like in the backend, and how can that be used in different contexts other than pages? So to do that, I'm going to open my IDE here. So how does the pipeline wizard look like? This is what I've committed just recently and what is finally merged. The pipeline wizard is basically just a Vue component. It's front-end only. There's no backend part to it. So it's very flexible, can be used in different places. So how am I using this in pages? In GitLab pages, I have another Vue component that is being mounted on the front end whenever I click this pages link here, using a little condition. So this is all it needs, basically. So the pipeline wizard is a new Vue component, and I'm passing it a template. And we're going to have a look at that template in a minute. And I'm passing it these props, which is basically just the project path, which is coming from the backend, and the default branch, which is also passed in from the backend. And now the pipeline wizard will do all the rest using the information from the template. Now we can have a look at how this template looks like. If you can see, it's a YAML file that is being loaded from this place. There's a templates folder inside the pipeline wizard folder, and we're going to have a look at that right now. So I'm going to look at the templates folder. Here's the pages Yama. And this is basically the whole logic behind the pipeline wizard. So basically what we're saying here is we're giving it the whole wizard a title. Get started with pages. We're giving it a description. So we have a little introductory text here. And here's the whole part that guides the user through this process. So we have three steps. This is a step, this is a step, and this is a step. And you can see how I can click here through step 1, obviously with a required field, a step 2, and a step 3. And the 4th step is always the commit step. Now, we have in each step, we define a set of inputs. They are basically widgets, so they can look differently. Most widgets are just text inputs. A widget could also be a list of text inputs, or in the future, right now, these are the only 2 widgets that exist. In the future, we're going to have more widgets like a drop-down. We could have a branch selector or anything that we basically could come up with. Now, this input has also a target, which is basically the name of a variable inside this template. So you see how build image is going to be included in this template, where the value of this input field is going to replace this build image variable inside the template. The nice thing is the pipeline wizard will also include the comments that you include here in the template. As you can see, it will show you all those comments, so you can help you can inject comments to help the user once they've left the wizard and are working in the GitLab CI YAML file on their own. For a little more information, I think the most complete documentation as to how this pipeline wizard is working is in the MR description for this MR. I'm currently also working on getting this whole instruction and documentation into the GitLab docs, although we currently don't have a proper place to put that, so I have to figure that one out where it's supposed to end up. Until then, I think the MR for the pipeline wizard, for the initial pipeline wizard, is probably the most informative space for any documentation. Right. Any questions so far?
Hey, I listed one question, so I'm not sure how good the question is, but I'll just ask you anyway. You mentioned that this is purely front end.
Yes.
But it also creates it also commits to a branch for me.
Yes. Well, the information as to how the pipeline wizard is set up and its logic, how it's working, is happening all in the front end. Now, it does at the last bit, the very last step, the commit step, is basically a GraphQL query that sends this finished GitLab CI YAML file to the backend. But the backend wouldn't know how you created this using the web IDE or a static editor or whatever. You're basically just sending the finished CI YAML file to the backend. The good thing is you really only have to set up the pipeline wizard like this in the front end. Anywhere in the whole GitLab UI codebase, you could just mount one pipeline wizard, pass it a template file, YAML file, give it the project path and default branch, and it's going to be happy.
Right. So you're saying no new existing endpoints in the backend were introduced? It uses
there were no endpoints introduced. It's basically just a very fancy way of writing a YAML file in the front end. Think of it as an IDE. Yeah.
Yeah. No. This is remarkable because we've discussed this before, but most of GitLab is just updating a YAML file, right? There's so much.
Yes.
So many parts of our application update a YAML file. We were just going through some of the security configuration sections, which are pretty much the same. I was talking about 5-minute production that I'm working on, which has a part or which involves updating YAML. I'm sure Darby has his mobile pipelines that can consume this too. So this is excellent. Thank you for creating this, Yannis.
Yeah, I mean, really, it is just a way of writing any YAML. It doesn't even just apply to the GitLab CI, although this is always the default value for the file name, and probably some other places where it references GitLab CI YAML because it has been written for that. But in the end, it would be very, very, very easy to use the same kind of framework to write Kubernetes configuration files, Helm charts, anything that's a YAML. could be done with this. So I should have called it a YAML wizard. I didn't, but it is.
Yeah, so staying on the theme of reusability,
Yeah.
after the last step of the wizard where it creates this commit, how do I, the consumer of this component, decide what the next step is, or the next endpoint is that it must go to, or the next view that it must render? Like, how do I decide what happens next?
I am planning that is not implemented yet, and that's my for the MR after the next one. I plan on introducing an event basically at dawn, and then redirect. I don't know, or you can do a router push. Anything. So it's going to emit a done event, probably, that you can then react to. And I mean, feel free to edit that or to create an MR that gives more context, like the file, the contents of the file. That could be a payload of that done event. I don't know.
I have a question. This looks really great. It looks also, so I've never seen this code before, but it looks super simple. So that's, I think, a great aspect. I was wondering what happens if you have a pipeline already. Is it supposed to work together, or is it going to create a separate pipeline just for the pages? Or
so the MVC, like it is right now, assumes you either have no existing pipeline. That is probably the most common use case for pages that I want to use it for, or you want to override it. So it doesn't parse an existing file, it just is going to override it. So as you can see, this project already has a GitLab CI YAML file. So it just says in the last step, that's the only difference, commit changes to your file, and it's going to override them. Yeah, as I said, it won't incorporate whatever exists. Although it is, I'd say, simple to medium simple effort to change that behavior, because we already do a lot of YAML parsing and YAML merging inside the editor. So the whole logic on how to do that is already there. So I already have a to-do here inside the code and an open issue to support just merging whatever you're doing into your existing GitLab CI YAML file. So that is a next iteration. It's planned. It would probably be as simple as introducing an API call here that basically reads the existing GitLab CI YAML file for that project. Although you'd have to think about how do we work with different branches, and that's the main reason why I haven't implemented it from the get-go. Basically, you just parse the existing YAML file, and instead of writing new document, you'd probably do I don't know, parse document and whatever is the value from the remote. So from the front end side, it's probably not difficult at all. The biggest challenge is like the user experience. What if there's a file in the dev branch, but not in the main branch? Are we using the main branch? What should be the behavior be here? So I haven't really thought about that yet, and that's the main reason why it's still open.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Right. yeah, so hopefully next week I can tell you some progress on the onboarding state column in the pages metadata, which is just another preparation step for using the pipeline wizard for pages.